phone call that ended Charlotte's era, Miles Bridges thought Charlotte was the place where his story would be finished. For 7 seasons, that city watched him grow, fall, return, and fight to become more than just another name on an NBA roster. He was not just a forward in a teal jersey. He was part of the identity, part of the noise, part of the pain, part of the hope that maybe, finally, the Hornets were about to turn the corner, and then, almost overnight, everything collapsed. First, Charlotte moved LaMelo Ball, the face of the franchise, the flash, the engine, the player who made the Hornets feel dangerous even when the standings said otherwise. That move alone shook the league. Because when a team trades a talent like LaMelo, it is not just adjusting the roster. It is admitting that the old dream is dead. But the real shock came next. Just days later, Bridges was gone too. The Hornets sent Miles Bridges, a future first-round pick and a second-round pick, to the Phoenix Suns in exchange for Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, and a future first-round pick. On paper, it looked like a basketball transaction. Picks, contracts, roster balance, tax savings, future planning. But anyone who had followed Charlotte knew this was much deeper than that. This was the end of an era, because Bridges had been there through everything. The empty seasons, the wild highlights, the LaMelo connection, the playoff hopes that always seemed close enough to touch, but never close enough to become real. He gave Charlotte 501 games. He became one of the franchise's most productive players. He built memories in a city that had waited years for something to believe in. And still, the front office decided it was time to move on. That is what makes this story so cold. Bridges was not traded from a team with no direction. He was moved after Charlotte finally looked like it was beginning to find life. The Hornets had young talent, momentum, and a fan base that was starting to wonder if the pain was finally ending. Then suddenly, the two players most connected to that era were both gone. LaMelo out, Bridges out. The old Charlotte erased in less than a week. For Bridges, the trade was not just about leaving a team. It was about leaving behind the city that watched every version of him. The rising prospect, the explosive dunker, the controversial figure, the comeback player, the veteran trying to prove he could still help a young team win. Charlotte had seen the best of him and the most complicated parts of him, and that is why the goodbye felt heavy. But Phoenix did not bring him in for nostalgia. The Suns are betting that Bridges can help Devin Booker win now. They see a powerful forward who can attack downhill, score through contact, rebound, create pressure, and give their offense another dangerous weapon. They see a player entering the final year of his contract with everything to prove. They see hunger. But the question is whether Phoenix also inherited the risk, because Bridges does not arrive as a clean story. He arrives with talent, baggage, pressure, and a divided fan base waiting to see what kind of man and player he will be in the desert. Some fans believe he deserves another chance to define his future. Others believe the Suns just made a mistake that could damage their culture. And that is why this trade is already bigger than basketball. It is about loyalty. It is about second chances. It is about front offices making ruthless decisions while players are forced to turn their lives into new chapters. It is about Charlotte choosing the future over the past, and Phoenix gambling that a complicated player can become the missing piece. So now the entire NBA is watching. Was Miles Bridges the player Charlotte gave up on too soon? Or did the Hornets finally make the hard decision they should have made long ago? And for Phoenix, the question is even sharper. Did the Suns just steal a motivated forward entering his prime? Or did they just repeat the same dangerous mistake that has haunted them before? Comment below where you are watching from right now. If you think Miles Bridges will prove Phoenix right, press 1 into the comments. If you think Charlotte made the smarter move, press 2. And if you want more NBA trade drama, player stories, and behind-the-scenes league news, make sure you subscribe before the next chapter begins. The kid Charlotte chose to believe in. Before the trade, before the headlines, before the split reaction in Phoenix, Miles Bridges was just a kid from Flint, Michigan, trying to prove that his game belonged on the biggest stage. His NBA story started with a twist. The Los Angeles Clippers selected him in the first round of the 2018 NBA draft. But before he could even build a life there, he was moved to Charlotte, just like that. Before he had worn a Clippers jersey, before he had felt what that organization could become for him, his future was redirected. That night quietly set the tone for everything that followed. Bridges entered the league as a player full of raw force. He was not polished in every area, he was not a finished star, but he had the kind of athleticism that made people stop watching the ball and start watching him. He could explode off 2 feet, finish above defenders, run the floor like a wing, and bring a violent kind of energy that young teams desperately need. Charlotte needed that. The Hornets were a franchise stuck between hope and frustration. They had a fan base that wanted something real. They had a city that wanted to matter again in the NBA conversation. They had flashes, moments, and names, but not enough direction. So when Bridges arrived, he became more than a rookie. He became a symbol of possibility. At first, he was the energy guy, the player who could change the mood of a game with one dunk, the player who could make a quiet building wake up, the player fans could attach themselves to, because even when the team was not winning enough, Bridges played like every possession mattered. That matters in a city like Charlotte, because when a franchise has been starving for relevance, effort becomes emotional. A chase down block feels bigger. A fast break slam feels like a promise. A young player smiling after a highlight feels like proof that better days might be coming. Bridges was not carrying the Hornets yet, but he was giving them a pulse. And slowly, he started growing into something bigger. The body got stronger, the confidence sharpened, the role expanded. He was no longer just a highlight machine. He became a real rotation piece, then a starter, then a player the organization could imagine as part of its long-term foundation. But the story truly changed when LaMelo Ball arrived. LaMelo gave Charlotte flash, vision, and national attention. Bridges gave Charlotte force, power, and finishing. Together, they became the kind of duo that could make a losing team feel exciting. Every lob looked like a preview of the future. Every fast break felt like the Hornets had finally found their identity. For the first time in years, Charlotte did not just have players, they had a show. And Bridges was right in the middle of it, running the floor, catching passes, attacking the rim, and turning LaMelo's imagination into real points on the board. The chemistry was instant. The fan base could feel it. The league could see it. But chemistry does not guarantee winning. That was the shadow hanging over the entire era. The Hornets had excitement, but they did not have playoff success. They had highlights, but not enough stability. They had young talent, but not the kind of results that change a franchise's reputation. Still, Bridges stayed. He kept building. He kept producing. He kept becoming more connected to Charlotte with every season that passed. And that is why the trade hurt. Because by the time the Hornets finally moved him, Bridges was not just a player they had drafted into their story. He was someone the city had watched grow up, stumble, return, and keep fighting inside the same jersey. That kind of connection does not disappear quietly. It leaves a mark. The LaMelo and Bridges era that never fully arrived. For a while, LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges looked like the beginning of something Charlotte had been waiting on for years. They were not perfect. They were not proven. They were not winning at the level the city wanted. But they were electric, and sometimes electricity is enough to make a fan base believe before the results actually arrive. LaMelo brought the imagination. Bridges brought the violence. LaMelo saw passing angles other guards would not even attempt. Bridges attacked those angles like he had been waiting his whole life for someone to throw him the ball there. One player created chaos with vision. The other finished it with force. That is why the highlights spread so fast. A simple fast break in Charlotte could suddenly feel like an event. LaMelo would push the ball with his head up, Bridges would sprint into open space, and within seconds the arena would erupt. It was young, loud, imperfect basketball, but it had life. It gave the Hornets a style. It gave fans a reason to watch even when the standings were ugly. And for a franchise that had spent years searching for a real identity, that mattered. The problem was that the show never became a playoff team. That is the part that still hangs over this entire story. Charlotte had the duo. Charlotte had the moments. Charlotte had national attention in ways it had not experienced in a long time. But when the season got serious, when the games had weight, when the standings demanded consistency, the Hornets kept falling short. That failure cannot be placed on one player alone. LaMelo had injuries and inconsistency around him. Bridges had his own complicated path. The roster never felt complete. The defense was rarely reliable enough. The front office never fully built the kind of balanced team that could turn excitement into postseason wins. But the record does not care about excuses. Year after year, the Hornets were fun, but not dangerous. Watchable, but not feared. Promising, but never complete. And in the NBA, that middle space is one of the most dangerous places a franchise can live, because hope can become a trap. The Ball-Bridges era gave Charlotte enough to believe, but never enough to arrive. It was a preview that kept looping without the full movie ever starting. Every season had a reason to think the next one might be different. Every offseason brought a new argument for patience. Every hot stretch made people wonder if the breakthrough was finally here. Then came the final season before everything broke apart. Charlotte started to show signs of real progress. The team had young pieces. The energy was better. The direction seemed clearer. Bridges was producing. LaMelo's name still carried weight. Fans were beginning to imagine a version of the Hornets where the years of waiting finally paid off. And then the front office chose a different truth. They did not just tweak the roster. They pulled the foundation out from under the era. LaMelo was moved. Bridges followed. In less than a week, the two players who had defined Charlotte's modern identity were gone. That is what makes this story feel almost unreal. The era did not end after a playoff series. It did not end with one final push. it did not end with the city getting closure. It ended through transactions, social media posts, and a fan base trying to understand how the future changed so fast. Maybe Charlotte looked at the Ball-Bridges era and saw too many unanswered questions. Maybe they saw a ceiling they no longer believed in. Maybe they decided that excitement without playoff proof was no longer enough. Whatever the reason, the result was brutal. The duo that gave Hornets fans hope became the duo that reminded them how quickly hope can be taken away. And for Bridges, that ending was personal, because LaMelo was not just a teammate who helped his numbers. He was the player who made Charlotte's offense feel alive. He was the partner in the highlights, the connection fans remembered, the other face of an era that never fully became what it was supposed to be. When that era ended, Bridges did not pretend it meant nothing. He understood exactly what was gone. The year that changed everything. Every Miles Bridges story eventually reaches the same difficult chapter. No matter how much people talk about the dunks, the scoring, the Charlotte years, or the Phoenix trade, the conversation always circles back to 2022. That was the year his career stopped being only about basketball. It became about consequence, public judgment, accountability, and whether a player can ever truly rebuild trust after a serious off-court controversy. Bridges missed the entire 2022-23 season. The league punished him. The Hornets were criticized for keeping him in their plans. Fans argued about whether he deserved another chance, whether the punishment was enough, and whether talent should ever make a team more willing to move forward. That debate never disappeared. When Bridges returned, he did not return to normal. Every interview carried weight. Every game had two conversations attached to it. One side saw a player trying to rebuild his career. The other side saw a past that could not be ignored. That is why Phoenix did not just trade for a forward. They traded for the entire story. The production, the athleticism, the contract year motivation, and the controversy that still follows him. In Phoenix, Bridges does not get a clean slate. No player truly gets that. What he gets is a new opportunity. And now, the only way to change the conversation is through consistency, maturity, and actions that prove his growth is real. Because this next chapter will not be judged only by points and rebound. It will be judged by whether Miles Bridges can show that the man walking into Phoenix is ready for the responsibility that comes with another chance. The comeback Charlotte never fully trusted. When Miles Bridges returned to Charlotte, the basketball talent was still obvious. He could score, he could attack the rim, he could rebound, run the floor, and give the Hornets real production. But the bigger question was never whether he could still play. The question was whether Charlotte could fully trust him as part of its future. For a while, he gave the organization reasons to believe. He produced, stayed available, and helped a young team become more competitive. There were stretches where the Hornets looked like they were finally moving towards something real, and that is what made the trade so shocking. Bridges was not moved because he had no value. He was moved because he still had value. Phoenix wanted him. Charlotte knew it could get something meaningful back, so the Hornets made the cold front office decision. Sell high before the next contract became a problem. That is the brutal side of the NBA. Fans remember loyalty. Front offices measure timelines. Bridges had history in Charlotte, but the Hornets had to ask whether that history should control the future. They decided it should not. After LaMelo was traded, Bridges could have become the default face of the old era. But Charlotte wanted a new direction, a cleaner timeline, and more room for its young core to grow. Keeping Bridges might have kept the story alive, but it also might have trapped the franchise in the same cycle. So Charlotte moved him, not because he meant nothing, but because meaning is not always enough to survive a rebuild. The goodbye that shook the league. When LaMelo Ball was traded, Miles Bridges reacted like someone who knew the Hornets had just lost more than a player. He knew an era had ended. He went to Instagram and spoke directly to the fans, not with polished corporate language, but with emotion. LaMelo had been his running mate, the engine behind so many Charlotte highlights, the player who made the Hornets feel alive even when the standings said otherwise. Then, only days later, Bridges was gone too. That was the moment the message became clear. Charlotte was not making small changes. Charlotte was tearing down the old identity completely. For Bridges, the trade to Phoenix was a shock because Charlotte was the city that had seen every version of him. The young prospect, the explosive dunker, the controversial figure, the comeback player, and the veteran trying to help the team win. Phoenix sees him differently. Suns fans do not carry 7 years of memories. They carry questions. Why Bridges? Why now? Why give up future assets? Why take on a player with both basketball upside and public baggage? That split reaction became the story. Some fans saw a motivated forward who could help Devin Booker immediately. Others saw another risky Suns gamble, another move that looked good on paper but could become messy in reality. For Bridges, the trade is not just relocation. It is an audition. He is entering a new city, a contract year, and a team with real expectations. Every game in Phoenix will help decide his next deal, his next reputation, and whether Charlotte gave up on him too soon. His goodbye to Charlotte was emotional, but his next chapter starts under pressure. What Phoenix thinks it found. Phoenix did not trade for Miles Bridges because it wanted nostalgia. The Suns made this move because they believe he fills a real need. They see a strong, athletic forward who can attack downhill, finish through contact, rebound, and give Devin Booker another offensive weapon. On paper, the fit makes sense. Booker needs players who can pressure the defense. Bridges can do that. He can attack closeouts, run in transition, and punish smaller defenders. If the ball moves and the spacing works, Phoenix suddenly becomes harder to guard. The dream is simple. Booker controls the offense, Jalen Green adds speed, Dillon Brooks brings toughness, Mark Williams protects the middle, and Bridges gives the Suns force at power forward. That version of Phoenix could be dangerous. But the biggest reason this trade matters is motivation. Bridges has never played in a true playoff run. After 7 seasons in Charlotte, he finally joins a team that expects to compete. That hunger could change how he plays, how he prepares, and how seriously he embraces his role. Phoenix is betting on that. They are betting that a new city, a contract year, and real expectations will bring out the most focused version of Bridges. He does not need to be the franchise savior. He just needs to attack, defend with effort, finish plays, and make life easier for Booker. If he does that, this trade could look smart, fast, but if he does not, the pressure in Phoenix will turn quickly, because Suns fans have seen bold moves before, and they are tired of expensive experiments that do not lead anywhere. The risk, Phoenix cannot ignore. The concern with the Miles Bridges trade is not that Phoenix added a bad player. The concern is that the Suns added a complicated player at a complicated time, while giving up future value for a move that still has major question. Phoenix has been here before. This franchise has chased big answers, sacrificed flexibility, and hoped talent would solve fit. But talent alone does not build a contender. Roles, balance, defense, and chemistry matter just as much. That is why this deal is risky. Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal were not stars, but they were useful. They could shoot, space the floor, and fit around Devin Booker without needing much of the ball. Bridges brings more athleticism and scoring pressure, but he also needs touches and has not always been a consistent defender. That matters in the West. Playoff teams will test him. They will attack weak points, force switches, and make Phoenix prove that this lineup can survive when the game slows down. Then there is the contract issue. Bridges is entering the final year of his deal. If he plays great, Phoenix may have to pay him. If he struggles, the Suns gave up assets for a short-term gamble. If he is just average, the decision becomes even harder, and that future pick could haunt them. Charlotte is betting that Phoenix may regret giving it up. Phoenix is betting that Bridges will make the cost worth it. That tension is what makes the trade so dramatic. There is also the culture question. Bridges brings a public history that fans will not ignore. If the team wins, the noise may get quieter. But if Phoenix struggles, every concern will come back louder. So Bridges must be more than productive. He has to be steady, professional, and mature. The Suns took the gamble. Now he has to make sure they do not regret it. Why Charlotte chose the future? For Charlotte, trading Miles Bridges was not just about moving a player. It was about cutting the final emotional tie to an era that never delivered enough. Bridges mattered. He gave the Hornets highlights, production, loyalty, and years of his career. But the Ball Bridges era never became a playoff breakthrough. It was exciting, but unfinished. Fun, but unstable. Promising, but not successful enough. At some point, Charlotte had to choose memory or future. They chose future. With LaMelo gone and Bridges gone, the Hornets are now building around a younger timeline. Brandon Miller and the next core need space, touches, and freedom to grow. If Bridges stayed, he might have taken over more of the offense, but that may not have helped the rebuild. So Charlotte chose clarity. Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal may not be stars, but they are easier to fit around young players. They can shoot, play roles, and help the team function while the new core develops. The draft pick is the real prize. That future Phoenix first rounder could become extremely valuable. Picks give rebuilding teams power. They can become players, trade assets, or insurance when the plan changes. That is why Charlotte's move may look cold now, but smart later. The Hornets were tired of being trapped between hope and disappointment. They were tired of waiting for the old core to become something it never became, so they finally admitted the truth. The era had reached its limit. They did not trade Bridges because they forgot what he meant. They traded him because they believed the next version of Charlotte needed to begin without him. The third act begins in Phoenix. Now Miles Bridges stands in Phoenix with everything to prove. He is not arriving as a mystery. The league knows his talent. Fans know his history. Teams know the risk. And that is why this next season could define more than his next contract. It could define how the NBA remembers this stage of his career. For Bridges, the lesson is clear. Talent opens doors, but maturity keeps them open. He has already shown he can score. He has shown he can return to the court and produce. Now he has to show he can help a serious team win. That means defending with focus, accepting his role beside Devin Booker, staying steady under criticism, and proving through action that growth is real. For Phoenix, the lesson is different. A team cannot keep chasing shortcuts without consequences. Bridges might help. He might become the physical forward the Suns needed. But if the move fails, people will ask whether Phoenix repeated the same mistake again, sacrificing future value for a short-term gamble that did not truly fix the team. For Charlotte, this is also a test. The Hornets chose direction over attachment. That is brave, but now they have to prove the rebuild is real. Picks mean nothing without smart decisions. Young talent means nothing without development. A new timeline means nothing without culture. So every side is under pressure. Bridges must prove he is ready. Phoenix must prove the gamble was worth it. Charlotte must prove letting go was the right decision. And maybe that is what makes this story bigger than one trade. It is about how players and franchises move on from complicated chapters. Sometimes the future cannot begin until the past is finally released. The human lesson is simple. No player should be remembered only by his best highlights, and no player can expect people to forget his worst mistakes. Trust is earned through time, humility, and consistent action. That is the road in front of Miles Bridges now. Phoenix will not give him an easy rewrite. The fans will demand results. Booker will need help. The West will show no mercy. And every night, Bridges will answer one question without saying a word. Is this the start of his real redemption arc, or just another risky NBA bet? If you believe Miles Bridges will become a major piece for Phoenix, comment 1. If you think Charlotte made the right decision, comment 2. If you think both teams are taking a dangerous gamble, comment 3. And if you want more NBA trade drama, player stories, and behind-the-scenes league breakdowns, make sure you like this video, share it with another NBA fan, and subscribe for the next story.